this computer. Okay, so I want to thank you all for being here, both in person and online, for our sort of inaugural of the Broadband Stakeholder Network and our first roundtable. And if you give me just a minute here, we'll bring up my PowerPoint. So, as you can see, those are some of our sponsors, and you'll hear more about them in just a moment. But so what I want to do is of course, is to welcome you all, and glad that you'll all be here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the network, but I'm going to keep that short because I want you most to hear about the awesome program we have today. But I did want to say some special thanks to a couple of people. Tom Schumann, I don't believe you're here today. Tom is the Executive Director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Innovation at Gateway Community College. And I wanted to thank Tom because he agreed to be a sponsor, and therefore we didn't have to pay for the use of the facility. Saved us $1,000. So I greatly appreciate his sponsorship for this event. I also want to say thanks to the Arizona State Library Archives and Public Records. All of you, if you didn't get your free book, those are back there in the corner for Tom Wheeler's book. And we want to thank the library for providing those books for us. I want to say thanks to our major sponsors. Steve Hill is the Executive Director of Satellite Broadcasting Communications Association. And Rob, are you here? Rob Whaler? Are you here somewhere? Okay, we'll give you just a minute, and then we're going to get to you. And then you're going to hear a little bit about the Arizona Telecommunications and Information Council and the Greater Arizona E-Learning Association. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we have flyers and stuff for you guys, so we don't want to take too much time talking about that. So I just want to tell you just quickly about launching the Arizona Broadband Stakeholder Network. And ATIC, the Arizona Telecommunications and Information Council, and Gazelle, the Greater Arizona E-Learning Association. I am the coordinator for Gazelle. Have launched this Broadband Stakeholder Network. And you'll see these are just some of the partners that helped us to plan this roundtable, and we greatly appreciate their help and their support. So a little bit about why are we doing this? Well, I'm not going to tell you why we need broadband. I think you all know that. It's important to economic development, workforce development, e-learning, business and e-commerce, all kinds of things that are important for the state and that broadband enables. But we do know that there's many tribal, rural, and other underserved communities around the state who still do not have decent broadband connections. And when we say fast, we want fast, reliable, and affordable broadband, which is really important. We also know that we got a lot of citizens here in the state who do not know how to be able to use technology effectively. And so we also want to be able to find some ways and strategies to be able to support them. So this is an interesting picture. And of course, it sort of really speaks to what the challenge is. But this picture, so some of you who were involved with us probably 15 years ago, we had a gentleman work for what was then the Arizona Arizona Department of Commerce, and did probably one of the first broadband reports for the state. And he wrote, and that picture was on that document, and I think it's still very appropriate for today. And then I also added, which I really like, so imagine traveling to Phoenix from Bisbee or Flagstaff or Yuma in a horse and buggy on a one-lane dirt road rather than zooming down the highway at 75, 80 miles an hour. Well, broadband's kind of like that today. When I first moved to Arizona, speed limit was 55, and I was traveling up here to Phoenix and Tucson. I'm down in Tucson. So we all know what slow is like, and now we know that people want to have fast internet connections. So just quickly, so we want the network and the roundtable basically to provide stakeholders, people who are involved with various initiatives. We've got a lot of different things going on. I should probably not have my back to you folks over here. Have a lot of things going on, and we wanted to provide a way for people to connect with each other, find some ways to share information, and to hopefully find some ways to accelerate broadband deployment in the state. We want to collaborate on strategies, initiatives, help those communities to also use those connections for economic development and so forth. So some of our stakeholders, we want economic development people, we want libraries, education folks, health services, public safety, libraries, and I said that twice. Yes, are important. Right, there you go, Mala. Telecommunications, technology companies, and more. So actually, just, hello. Okay. And so, of course, we want, again, we want to build a constituency of people we want to promote broadband in the state, and we want collaboration and coordination. But I did want to comment that hopefully that we'll be able to do some joint grant applications and stuff like that. So again, we want to do, hopefully that we'll be able to see some collaborative projects, maybe some joint grant applications, sharing of funding opportunities, aggregation of demand, and discussions and recommendations on policy and plans. But I do want to emphasize that we are not a sanctioned body. We are not going to be enforcing telecom policies. We're going to support other kinds of initiatives, and you're going to hear later from Jess Sabatka, who is the new broadband director for the state. So we are not going to be enforcement. We're not going to be policymakers, and probably not going to do plans, but we will provide input and so forth. But we'll see where this goes and how it evolves. So some of the things that we're going to be doing is roundtables like this, networking, webpage. We already have a bunch of stuff with some of the different initiatives that are going on in the state, and those will be on our website. Maybe we'll do more webinars, discussion of policy issues, online community, and maybe others to be determined. So we're still in the early stages of this. So with that, I want to invite, so you're here for Rob. Rob is not here today. So do you want to come on up and just tell us quickly about LandRack? We appreciate them stepping up as being a major sponsor for us. Why don't you just sit right here in front of the camera and introduce yourself.
I'm Blake Mayfield. I'm here for Rob. I obviously work for LandRack. We've had great success in the K through 12 with E-rate in the state of Arizona. We're always looking for more opportunities, whether it's with cities, counties, libraries, schools, et cetera, to build fiber out. And currently our network, I think we have 11 school districts we built private fiber networks for in Arizona alone. So because of that and the way that those school districts fall, we're starting to have a bigger network throughout the valleys. So,
excuse me 1 second. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt you here, but I don't think I'm sharing here. I should really do that. I think people would appreciate that. Share. Okay. That's what I want. Okay, now we should be good.
good to go?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
I have a good memory. It's just a little sharp. There we go. That's better.
So with that being said, just with the success we've had in the K through 12 industry, obviously once you've built networks for a school district, that's to serve the community at large. So once you've already laid the backbone of fiber throughout a lot of the valley like we have, we're really excited for other projects that we could help serve people that are probably in this room who are looking for fiber for some of the projects that they want to do in the future. So I'll have cards in the back. I would love to pass those out to anyone who's interested. Obviously, the only way for us to really get into talks about any projects that you guys would need fiber for is to know some of the sites and where you're going to need fiber, and we could do estimates for anyone, whether it's city, county, or business who needs fiber. So again, I'm Blake Mayfield. I'll be in the back with my cards if anybody needs anything. But I'm excited to be here, and I'm also excited to hear what everybody else is working on here, because it sounds like there's a lot of people in this room who could collaborate to serve the community at large. So thank you.
Good. Thanks, Blake. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
For being here. And now I want to introduce Steve Hill. I can remember Steve. That's for me. Steve is with SBCA, and he's going to tell you what that is and who they are. And thank you again for your support. We appreciate it.
Thank you. So satellite, SBCA, we are the Satellite Broadcast Communications Association, And we represent the satellite providers that are currently providing satellite internet throughout the country and the state. My role is to go and work with stakeholders and policymakers to educate them about the technology, sort of where we are now, and really where the future is going. So industry's been around for about 15 years. In the last couple of years, we've launched some new satellites. We're currently in the state able to offer speeds of 25.3 everywhere, and in certain markets, 100 meg service. Nationally, we have about 2 million customers. The industry is continuing to expand and grow. I'm sure people have heard companies called SpaceX have recently launched a new type of network of low Earth satellites. Amazon is looking to do that. OneWeb. I am going over tomorrow to the Tempe office of Viasat, who's one of our partners, to actually talk to them about their next generation satellite due to go up towards the end of next year, which is actually going to have more power than every other satellite that's up there. It's over 1 terabit of power. We're going to then be able to offer 100 meg plus service everywhere in the country once that satellite is up and deployed. So we are part of that rural solution for residents and small business and government. I'll close by saying, you mentioned public safety. One of the roles we do play is very much in the public safety market. So in the earthquake and in the hurricane in Puerto Rico, we deployed over 60 satellite internet systems to provide communications either for residents, so they could log into their Facebook accounts at the convention center and notify people at home, to recovery workers. And we still have about 30 systems there. Mexico Beach, Florida still has 5 systems that are supporting the fire department and police department. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening with satellite. I'll be over in the corner. I'm more than happy to answer any questions people might have. I really thank everybody for their opportunity today.
Sounds good. So I also want to thank IT Connect, Zayo, you guys are over here somewhere. We thank you guys for also being a sponsor. Zoom has been providing us a video connection for, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years for free. And so we greatly appreciate and always like to recognize their sponsorship. And I had Neebies on here. They actually brought a camera out here. We had some technical difficulties. And so I called them up last minute and told them I needed some help, and they just jumped on it. So, so again, I thank you. John, if you can hear me okay, can you please nod? Good, then we're good to go. Okay, so just a little bit about the program quickly. So you're going to hear from, we have a video from Tom Wheeler, who's the former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, and you're going to hear and see his video in just a little while. And then later, John Windhausen is already connected to us, but he's going to be talking about smoke and mirrors, the update on congressional broadband legislation, and probably some other things. And so John's already online here with us. Thanks, John. You'll be on a little while. And later, and he's not here yet, I know, but Jeff Sabatka is the new vice president and state broadband director with the Arizona Commerce Authority, which is, for those of us who have been involved with this for many years, we're very excited to have that person in place. So you'll hear more about that later on. So we also are going to have a panel with some other state broadband initiatives, some key initiatives that are going on in the state. You'll hear more about that. You'll also hear about the Arizona Broadband for Education initiative, which is very exciting for the state and was a great accomplishment. We had some folks like Mala sitting over here at the table who were very instrumental in making that happen. You're going to hear some enlighten us, but make it quick, Ignite presentations. If you've never experienced Ignite presentations, the speaker gets 5 minutes, 20 slides, and they move every 15 seconds. 5 minutes, that's it. So we have two of those presentations, and that's it. And then you're going to get a chance to share some information with us about what you heard, what you'd like to hear, what we can do for you on into the future. And then the reception. Now the reception, we did plan this purposefully for the program to be over about 5 and the reception from 5 to 6. And the reason for that is, I know you, those of you in Phoenix and those of you who are outside, don't want to sit in traffic for an hour. So you'd have much more fun and much better time spent being here than being sitting out on the road. So we did that on purpose. So with that, Mark. So Mark Oatstein is a longtime board member with ATIC and is the president of International Research Center, and he's going to do a quick intro to Chairman Wheeler.
Great, thank you. Mark Goldstein, International Research Center and HEIC Secretary and Gazelle board member, so been at this a long time with many of you in the room. Chairman Wheeler, or Tom Wheeler, was chairman of the FCC from 2013 to 2017, held by many to be one of the most productive and engaged and positive FCC experiences in the agency's history. He's been an entrepreneur. He's been in the cable industry and telecom before the FCC. He has several books that he's authored, including the one you've been gifted today, his most recent book, From Gutenberg to Google, The History of Our Future, thanks to Holly Henley and Mala and State Library for sponsoring the event, essentially by buying you all copies and shipping them to Chairman Wheeler and getting them signed and otherwise the logistics for that. Currently, he's a visiting fellow at Brookings Institution and a senior research fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School of Public Policy. So there you go.
Sounds good. So if all goes well, we should be seeing a video in just a moment. Come on. Let's go. Okay. Yeah. So it should have been coming through the house. So give me a second here, because that's not going to happen. Yeah, we're going to do this. Not the best, but it is what it is. Huh. Actually, it should be, but. Yeah, give me a second. Where? Oh, sorry. Come on. Okay, so why isn't it? Okay, so it should be.
It's great to be with you at Arizona Broadband. I would wish that I could be busy. Actually, I'm pretty close to you right now. I have family that's pretty good. It's spouses in college. But I wanted to join you in celebrating and to recognize this important. Broadband is the most powerful platform in history of the but it's used
Excuse me just one second. John, can you hear him? Okay. No. Okay. Let's see what we can do about that. What's that? Anybody have any ideas? Yeah, it should be. It should be shared because it's in the PowerPoint. So it's being shared already. What was that? Somebody saying something there? New share. Let's try that. Probably. Yeah. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, I can't do that because it's private share. What was that? Let me think. How can we do this? Those of you online, just be patient with us and we'll figure this out, hopefully. Yeah, let's try that. This is this one. We'll give it a try. See if this works. Okay, what do I want to do here?
Hello, it's great to be with you at Arizona Broadband.
Can you hear him now, John?
I'm wishing that I could be busy.
So.
Pretty close to you right now. I am there and pretty good. It's south of you in college. But I wanted to join you today. And to recognize it's important. Broadband is the most powerful platform in the history of the planet. But it's used when you come in with basic. That's the word we call Arizona. That's why the word is so. Arizona is
Sorry.
how the White River, I was very impressed. So,
Of course. Thank you.
so that home can be greater and place. You know, I have just finished the deeper we are. The basic concept of provision is that we are a how we do that defines who we are. Both as society and as the economy. And what we're building is a third great unlock the way that information is stored and produce great ideas. Speculation, great. It started us. Second grade, that was revolution. One-two punch for the next section. Railroad. The telegraph. Those two together created the Industrial Revolution. Now, progress, coupled with Moore's law, the effects of Moore's law, low cost heating, brings us right to the first, third place. I think that what you're going to do trigger that third grade though, or remove us from being trusted. That orchestrating data to things in the network. One is AI. Other is connection to faster funds. What do you know that out of for AI? We've got to get broadband and limited. The third big transformation was we're able to watch it. Blockchain is so much more than Bitcoin and activities early on. It's the redefinition. The information or full app to those so those who they are blocked to cyber-religious. The fact is that we our future different. Let me just touch for a second on when the railroad was free of the industrial level, society said to so they industrialized the program and moved to a factory like setting. That was a factory class. And going through 12 steps, coming in the first class. We have to move from justification to individualization. That is that individualization to access to I had the privilege of visiting schools before and after broadband stakeholder. And I remember one that they told me that individualization that broadband broadband is for being stage on the stage, guy on the side. So, you know, I talk to everybody in the class knowing that it's not a class like full day. Now, move around and watch because they are really good. And I have moved from home to all because of this movement because of you know, the E-rate reform is flawed. So, one of the things that I found all those that I have as everybody. Well, ice, and that's the control. After
Oops, sorry.
government will step up.
Hey, so those of you online, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I apologize. Whoops. I apologize that we had a problem with Chairman Wheeler's video sound. I will send the links out to all of you afterwards. So hopefully you'll be able to hear the next presentation. And so with that, I want to introduce, many of you know Mala. Mala is with the Arizona State Library, and she actually helped to arrange the video for, excuse me, for the chairman and for John. And so I've asked her to introduce John Windhausen. And John, you're there. And she's going to do a quick intro for you, and then it's all yours. And hopefully everybody will be able to hear you. If you don't mind. So we don't think.
Oh, turn the computer down. No, how do you turn this down? Hi, everyone. I'd like to introduce John Windhausen Jr. John is the executive director of Shelby Coalition. Shelby stands for Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition, which he founded in 2009 with the support of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. John spearheads Shelby membership growth. He shapes the broadband policy recommendations. Previously, he served as the president of the Association for Local Telecommunication Services and spent 9 years on the Capitol Hill, starting his career as a staff attorney at FCC. In his role as a senior counsel to the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee, John was a principal staff person responsible for drafting the Telecommunication Act of 1996 that gave birth to the E-rate program. He served as the chief legal advisor on telecommunication issues to Senator Fritz Holling and Daniel Inouye. John had authored several papers documenting the benefits of broadband. His EDUCAUSE white paper, A Blueprint for the Big Broadband, resulted in the creation of the BTOP program, the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program. In 2012, John was named the Community Broadband Hero of the Year by the National Association of Telecommunication Officers and Advisors. John sits on the board of directors of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, NDIA, and he holds a JD from the UCLA Law School and a bachelor's degree in history from Yale University. Please welcome John Windhausen. The title of his presentation is Smoke and Mirrors, Update on Congressional Broadband Legislation.
Well, thank you very much, Mala. Thank you, Steve. Before I get started, we should do a sound check. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, it's a great pleasure to be with you, and especially following after Chairman Wheeler. I know from my dealings with Chairman Wheeler, and we had him on our Shelby call when he is doing his book tour. He's very thoughtful.
Yeah, I'm working on it just a second. Having problems today. So we're going to do it the hard way. Okay, John, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just saying, Chairman Wheeler is extremely thoughtful. I wasn't able to hear his comments this time, but I know from my past conversations with him, he's really a visionary, and really, to his credit, has an incredible storehouse of knowledge, not just about current policies, but about the history of our communications landscape. And he really has a vision of where he wants the country to go. And he was able to implement a lot of that at the FCC. I view Shelby's work as very complementary to what Chairman Wheeler is trying to accomplish. So we are working on a lot of the universal service issues. We're focused on anchor institutions as our primary audience and our primary target, but we're not just about the anchor institutions. Our little turn of phrase is that we promote broadband to and through the anchor institutions as a way to reach the residential consumer in those communities. So we are very strong advocates for high capacity broadband that is open and accessible to not just the anchor institutions, but the residential consumers and low-income consumers. But we really see the anchor institutions as the key gateway to serving those communities. So we try to take that policy objective and find opportunities to weigh in on a variety of proceedings before the FCC, before NTIA, the Department of Commerce, and congressional legislation. And I understand you would like me to focus most of my remarks on the congressional broadband legislation, which I'm happy to do. We're very engaged in that process, but we also work on the E-rate program quite a bit, the rural health care program administered by the FCC. We're also doing a lot of work around EBS, the Educational Broadband Services Spectrum, to try to make those licenses available for schools and higher education, as has been done in the past with that EBS spectrum. We promote unlicensed spectrum as well as licensed, and there's an FCC proceeding on 6 gigahertz that we hope the FCC will open up more Wi-Fi spectrum at the 6 gigahertz level. We follow the Reconnect program being implemented by the Rural Utility Service. We're getting some word that our members are disappointed with how difficult it is to obtain funding from that RUS program. And also broadband mapping is an issue that we are trying to engage with. And just by example on broadband mapping, I had a great meeting just last week with the CEO of CostQuest, Jim Stegeman, and he had just come from a meeting with the U.S. Telecom Association, and they're working on developing more granular maps with U.S. Telecom. And to my glee, Jim Stegeman talked about how he's been working with U.S. Telecom to map the broadband for anchor institutions. And that's a big change because traditionally the traditional telecom industry has divided the world between business and residential, and leaving the anchor institutions as the key components that are left out of the analysis. So just the fact that US Telecom is now agreeing to talk about mapping for anchor institutions, I view as a victory for Shelby and a victory for our advocacy, because our effort is to elevate the visibility of anchor institutions in these broadband policy issues. So it's really an extra pleasure to be with the Arizona Broadband Stakeholders Group, because I understand so many of you are working to promote broadband for anchor institutions as well. And we really appreciate that. And as Steve, you mentioned, and Mala mentioned, we have a lot of members of Shelby are also there in the room with you or online. So we really view this as a collaborative process. And we're making some headway. We're making some success across a variety of different proceedings. But we haven't achieved the goal number 4 that was in the National Broadband Plan, and that called for gigabit connectivity to all the anchor institutions by the year 2020. And we're not going to make that goal, unfortunately. But we do have a chance to make that goal by 2025. And that's, I think, the opportunity we have right now with this new broadband legislation that was just introduced by Chairman Frank Pallone in the House. And I think this is, I'll talk about some of the other bills, but I think the Lift America Act that Chairman Pallone just introduced a couple of weeks ago has the best chance of driving, not just of passing, but of driving broadband policy forward in the next year, if we can get that bill passed. Now, I note with some pleasure the title of this presentation, Smoke and Mirrors. I'm not sure exactly who came up with that turn of phrase. And I understand there's a lot of skepticism in the past about congressional efforts to pass comprehensive broadband legislation. I'm actually more optimistic than most people about the prospects for a comprehensive bill. And let me tell you why. And it's simple politics in this case. Both President Trump and the congressional Democrats are both courting the same component of the electorate, and that's the middle class, working class, blue collar construction workers. These are the key voters in the states of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa. Those are the key states that are going to turn the tide one way or the other. Those are the states that went for Trump in the last election, and those are the states that the Democrats are trying to win back. So the significance of Chairman Pallone's bill, the Lift America Act, is not just that it's proposing $40 billion in broadband funding. Its bigger picture significance is that this is an effort by Nancy Pelosi to win back those voters to the Democratic ranks. And so those voters are going to benefit from this build out, not just of broadband, but of infrastructure in general. And President Trump is not going to let Nancy Pelosi get away with owning that issue just for herself and the Democrats. So I know this goes back and forth. 3 weeks ago, there was a meeting with the president and Nancy Pelosi where they seemed to come to an agreement about a $2 trillion infrastructure package. And so things were looking up for broadband a month ago. And then a week ago, they had a meeting that did not go so well. So it's a little bit of a downturn, but I still have some optimism that this bill could actually emerge in this Congress. And if it moves forward, as I suspect it will, it's likely to pull a lot of other broadband legislation along with it as amendments and riders to that legislation. So when I look at all of the varieties of congressional bills that have been introduced, this is, I think, possibly the most dynamic period in congressional broadband legislation that we've seen in 20 years since the 1996 Telecom Act. I mean, just to go down the list briefly, the Access Broadband Act has already passed the House and is awaiting action by the Senate. That would set up an Office of Internet Connectivity within NTIA in the Department of Commerce. I mentioned the Lift America Act. That was introduced with all 31 Democrats on the House Commerce Committee as original co-sponsors. So that means that they're setting up the bill to be passed through the committee and probably brought to the House floor later this summer for passage. There's a few bills on broadband mapping. Senator Klobuchar has introduced one of those bills to improve broadband mapping, and her proposal to do so is to embrace the idea of crowdsourcing of broadband mapping and getting consumer reports of broadband integrated into the FCC's broadband maps. I have a little bit of healthy skepticism about how well these broadband mapping projects will work, but we can come back to that if you have questions. There's an Internet Exchange Act that was just introduced on a bipartisan bill by Blackburn and Baldwin, and that would promote the building of Internet exchange meet points, carrier hotels, if you like, in rural markets that would help reduce the cost of providing broadband connectivity in rural areas. And then a big one is the Digital Equity Act that Senator Patty Murray passed. She's from the state of Washington. And she was joined by 16 other co-sponsors. The Digital Equity Act is intended to help low-income consumers obtain access to broadband. So in other words, once you've built this network, it's not enough just to build it. You need to have consumers actually using it and subscribing to it. So her bill would authorize funding through NTIA and funding for states to promote digital inclusion as a way to help consumers get connected to this legislation. There's another bill introduced by Senator Klobuchar to measure the economic impact of broadband, which is, a significant, important effort in order to document how broadband can increase economic growth. And then there's also a Broadband Interagency Coordination Act that was introduced by Senator Wicker, who is chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee. So all these bills, if there's a driving bill, all of these bills could theoretically be combined and coalesce into a movement to try to address the needs for broadband in a comprehensive fashion. And the Shelby Coalition, we've put together our own bill, which we haven't, we're just bringing up to Congress now to try to find a sponsor for that bill. But as you can imagine, our bill is focused on anchor institutions. And we have a variety of provisions to make sure that the anchor institutions can get gigabit connectivity by the year 2025. We're moving towards looking at the Senate for that bill, because when we proposed our ideas to Chairman Pallone in the House side, well, they took a lot of our ideas and put them into the Lift America Act. So that was a big success as far as our agenda is concerned in our advocacy. Now, we still have more work to do. As some of our education advocates or schools districts tell us, it's not enough to have gigabit connectivity to the schools. The standard really should be gigabit connectivity for every 1,000 users. And that, in fact, some larger school districts need much more than 1 gigabit. They may need 2 or 5 or 10 gigabits of service to those school districts. So that's one amendment to the Lift America Act that we would suggest. Medical facilities need broadband as well. We have one example of a network in New England, the New England Telehealth Consortium, that they reported that their healthcare facilities needs for broadband has grown 550% in the last 6 years, from 20 megabit, an average of 20 megabits of service per site to 130 megabits per site. And that was as of 2 years ago. So the needs for healthcare broadband increasing exponentially. So I think I'll close, Steve, by saying this is a unique period in our legislative lifetimes. You've got several dynamics which are pushing legislation forward. So you've got the rural markets that don't have much broadband that really need the focus. And yes, we do need to connect those people. We also need to connect the urban markets, the urban voters who may have broadband available, but it's not affordable. So that's where the Digital Equity Act comes in. And then you've got this race to 5G and the needs of getting greater fiber out, spread all around the country, because the advent of 5G needs to ride on a fiber backbone. So it's not just enough to focus on spectrum. We also need to promote greater fiber build out on a nationwide basis to make sure these rural areas get the benefit of 5G. So we've got a number of dynamics: anchor institutions, rural divide, homework app, which I didn't mention, but that's a key component as well, 5G, low-income consumers, all of these different sectors and segments representing different parts of the electorate all have a need for greater broadband. And so that's why I give the chances of federal legislation about a 50-50 chance. I know that's still not high, but that's higher than most people would give it. But it's worth paying a close attention to because this funding bill could have an enormous impact on our future. And as I say, we really want to try to get these problems solved so everybody has a high capacity connection for the future by the year 2025. And that's what we're shooting for. So Steve, I'll pause there or stop there based on your agenda. I'm happy to take any questions or add additional comments if you'd like.
Question? Michael?
Hello, John. This is Michael Sherman from the Suncor Road Network.
Excuse me one second, Michael. Can you hear him okay, John?
Thanks for participating. First, I just want
Michael,
to
hold on. Michael, hold on one second. Can you hear him or not?
I can hear he's speaking, but I can't get every word. Is it possible for him to move closer to the mic?
You're going to need to use this mic up here. So, yeah, it's right there.
Oh, okay. How about this, John?
Oh, that's much better, Mike.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So, again, thank you. First of all, I want to acknowledge you and Shelby for not only the work that you do, kind of directly in influencing Congress, but how well Shelby collaborates with other organizations. I'm thinking, of course, the Quilt, which represents other higher ed networks, Internet 2, and all that. And it's really, that's appreciated, and I think brings a stronger, more powerful voice to our community, from our community. So thank you for that. I did want to ask about the Internet Exchange Act. I'm not sure I heard an opinion from you on it, but first of all, I understand that from Congressman O'Halloran's office here in Arizona, that there's going to be a House version of that introduced. And I'm interested in your point of view because I believe it does allow for E-rate and rural health care money to be used for that purpose. So if you could speak to that.
Thanks for raising that. And that's interesting to hear that it's going to be introduced in the House as well. To be honest, I'm still gathering information about that, the merits of that bill, the Internet Exchange Act. I get the concept of reducing the costs to rural markets, and that strikes me as a positive approach. And it would set up a grant program to fund those facilities run by NTIA at the Department of Commerce. So that sounds like a good idea. What gives me pause is the reference to E-rate and the rural health care programs, because those are programs run by the FCC. And we don't want to disrupt those programs. We want to make those programs better, and we want to adequately fund, especially the rural health care program doesn't have enough funding today. But it's not clear to me how that bill would interact with the E-rate program and the rural health care program. If it's a supplement or a complement to those programs, then great. I'd be all for that. We do need to have unified facilities and a single application process to make it easier to apply for that funding. But if they're proposing to use this Internet Exchange facilities as a replacement for E-rate or replacement for the rural health care program, then we're going to have a problem.
Okay. Yeah. You should be good there, Galen.
Can you hear me, John?
Yes, I can.
Can you see me?
Not quite. I see your elbow.
No, it's all right.
If you sit in the chair.
No, we're good.
It's okay. Hey, been a little while. Had a little hiatus from broadband activities here, but I'm going to try to get back into it. It's good to see you again.
Oh, good to see you, Galen.
I'm very impressed with what you've accomplished. I'm interested in the Digital Equity Act and also some kind of normalization, if you will, of using right-of-way for broadband pathways. And common we have many, many different right-of-ways already. In Arizona, we passed a bill for our state to have state highways become broadband highways. And we have a lot of counties, 3,000 throughout the United States. We only have 15 in Arizona, but we have a lot of county roads that seems like good pathways for fiber. But we have differing regulations, and so some kind of standardization of both in the federal level and the state level and even the county level, where we educate counties to get their right-of-way issues settled so that even a county road or a forestry road could be used in the process of laying fiber. And typically these can be direct, and they would be protected and accessible then to all kinds of fiber. And I think that would greatly reduce at least the legal costs of planning fiber routes throughout rural areas. I'm interested in Arizona, but I imagine that every other state has similar issues. And they all have county roads and utility roads that go just about everywhere. So I throw that out to you and see if there's any congressional activity that you know of that's concerning right-of-way use for fiber.
Well, yeah, thank you, Galen. I totally agree with you about the importance of gaining access to conduit and rights of way. It's actually an issue that the Trump administration has recognized as an important barrier that needs to be overcome. And that's one of their recommendations in the document they released a couple of months ago regarding a vision for broadband. So it is important, but what I've also heard is that it's important not to preempt the states or the municipalities in determining how to administer their rights of way. And so I totally agree with you about the need for some federal uniformity and standard setting because too much bureaucracy can impede the build out of these facilities. One of the benefits of the Lift America Act that I mentioned was introduced by Pallone is that it does contain a provision to require a fiber conduit to be opened up. And if you're going to be building fiber conduit with federal funds, then it should be opened up for interconnection. And the conduit itself has to be made available. So it's an attempt to try to address the right-of-way issue, not through preemption, but as a condition of funding. In other words, you can't get the funding unless you agree to open up your conduit and rights of way. And I think that's a more likely approach that is more likely to pass and gain congressional support than congressional preemption.
One more question. Going once, going twice. We're done then. John, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time and for participating with us today.
It's my pleasure, Steve. And Mala, thank you very much for the chance to be with you.
Yeah. And again, I want to thank Mala also for arranging John to speak today. So for those of you who are online and those of you in the room, we're slightly technology challenged. This morning I had arranged to have a camera here with pan, tilt, and zoom, built-in microphones, all that stuff, and it didn't work. So we're making do with what we've got. So I appreciate the patience. So we're doing it the hard way. I got to move the camera around. Not the ideal, but it is what it is. So appreciate your patience with that. So with that, we're going to move on. So Jeff, want to come on up? Come on down. So as he's heading up here, you're going to hear from and have a chance to talk some with with Jeff Sabata. Jeff is the new state broadband director for the state of Arizona, recently appointed. And for those of us who have been involved in this issue for many, many years, we're very excited not only to have that position, but Jeff brings a great background to this job. And so we're really pleased to have him here today to talk a little bit about what his vision is and some of the challenges or whatever, and to get some input and feedback from you folks. So with that, Jeff, it's all yours.
Great, thank you. Woody Allen said 80% of life is showing up. I guess I'm glad I'm here. I've seen some of our audiovisual issues. I accepted this job with the understanding we were going to do things a little bit differently. In the past, there have been a lot of studies, there have been a lot of mapping conversations and different things, and there was a lot of money spent. And as I jokingly told Steve and others, there have been a lot of bridge to nowhere networks built in different parts of the state. So we're approaching this a little bit differently, and I want to offer my opinion, but the policy discussions will be handled by the governor's office. I'm not here to lobby the legislature to spend a whole lot of time there, although I spend some time there. My job is to meet with the communities, to understand the needs of the communities, to understand who is in the communities today as carriers, who would like to be in the communities, and bring these coalitions together to make some stuff happen. As you know, broadband is something that we take for granted here in the Phoenix metro area, but as I meet with people, for example, from Navajo County and Apache County and others, the limitations on what they can do, it's startling. When you talk about hospitals that can't send scans in real time, I've heard stories of folks having to literally get in their car and drive it to a place where they can send it. It's not good. This is a high priority for the governor. As you know, the legislature was up very late over the weekend passing a budget. Contained in that budget was $3 million. That money is to be used for rural broadband development. In the past, we've had some success at the state level, particularly with MALA and the E-rate program and Milan. They have been able to leverage money that was set aside primarily by Andy Tobin, who drove that project, to bring a lot more federal money in. And in addition to building these communities, these coalitions, there is federal money out there. I've had the chance, I've been at this for 60 days, to meet with a lot of communities, to meet with some folks with the USDA in Tucson. And the gentleman who handles USDA for this part of the country had said, I handle New Mexico and Arizona, and I spend my time in New Mexico because they seem to be more engaged. I'd like to change that. There have been several community groups that have been involved in applying for grants here, primarily the USDA Reconnect grant. I know there's some strings attached. I know it's not perfect, but it is something that we need to do. $600 million now, $550 million in the fall. It's a significant amount of money. We've heard about the $20 billion for 5G. Again, policy, when that happens, that'll be great, but we're going to focus on what we can do today to move the needle on these areas. Again, with the legislature, we were given $3 million to help leverage other opportunities, other community groups. I've had a chance to meet with several community groups that really seem to get it, that can be used as models for other parts of the state. Payson, Yuma. Some of these cities have been at this for a little while and have had challenges and have brought together city, county, private money, carriers to get this done. My hope is that we can use this as a model in other communities and in other parts of the state. Another problem we've had in the past is that we've had a lot of these programs. E-rate's probably a good example, where we've had networks built straight to a school and they go right through downtown. They don't hit the municipal complex, they don't hit the businesses. What we aim to do is to work together to better understand who's building what, where, and coordinate with other people and make these opportunities available to others. Apache County is working on a large program, 3 large programs out there now. They're applying for reconnect grants, and they're working with the carrier to put an additional 96 fiber cable in the ditch for other uses. That's a good model for other carriers, for other counties. So we want to take these wins, these good outcomes, and try to socialize them around and provide some expertise and some help when needed. We also want to partner with the carriers. I know everybody has their issues with different carriers for different reasons, but at the end of the day, the only way this gets done is if we all work together. We've had great success so far, and I believe this is going to be a great program with the FirstNet program with AT&T. We've had some great success around the state with companies like Zayo that are laying fiber in our rural areas. I'd like to expand that. My hope is that as leaders from around the state, that you all are willing to work with us, that you're willing to be open with us, and we can take these wins and build upon them, go back to the legislature and ask for some more money next year. I was just on a call with NTIA and folks who have my job around the country, and I found it interesting that there are some states that are doing much better than we are. Washington's probably a good example. They have a huge funding, legislative funding for this year, even more coming next year. Other ones that surprise me, Utah has disbanded their office and they're not funding them. My hope is that we'll be a Washington, and there's things we can learn from these other states. I know everybody has horror stories and bad things that happened in the past. Believe me, I know. My hope is that we can work together and find these wins this year. We can find these projects for next year and get something done, not just talk about getting something done. I'm here, I'm accessible. I want to help, but I'm one person. I've been here 60 days. We got $3 million, that was job one. We rewrote the state broadband plan. It's at the governor's office right now. You should see it shortly. We have a broadband website going up either today or tomorrow. We have a letter for the governor for anybody applying for USDA reconnect grants. And we have strategy to focus on rural Arizona. I live in Maricopa County, and somebody told me one time, it's not the state of Maricopa, it's the state of Arizona. And I believe that is something we need to remind ourselves. Just because we have gigabit Ethernet or Cox at our homes, that doesn't mean that everyone has that. So that's really where the focus will be. Rural areas, tribal areas, and partnering with the institutions, the libraries, E-rate, and the counties to get something done. I'm here to help. I'm new, I'm learning, but I will work very hard to make this happen. Thank you.
So I had a chance to talk with Jeff about a week or two after you took the job, and he said, you know, I'm ready to hit the ground and I'm ready to make things happen. I don't want to just sit around and talk to Jeff and talk all the time. I want to make things happen, and he's already kind of given you an idea of what that's all about. Oh, sorry. So I was just saying that I had a chance to chat with Jeff about a week or two after he was the job, and he just said, I'm ready to get going here, and I want to make things happen. I don't want to just sit around. I don't want to just sit around in meetings all the time. I want to make things happen, and you've already heard a little bit about that already. So with that, are there any questions? Yeah, I know Jeff would like to hear from you. Suresh, come up here, please. Yeah, but they won't be able to hear you online.
So how well is the information already available in terms of the coverage, where the gaps are, where the connectivities are, who the parties are, and where the intersections are, where the potential opportunities basically?
It's not good. The reality is that there's no great master map we can all look at. If you ask the carriers, a lot of them will say it's proprietary, in some cases Homeland Security information. and they're not going to give that up. I have been working with the folks from Representative O'Halloran's office who have some stuff going through to hopefully open some of this up. But to the carrier's point, there is some stuff that does have homeland security implications we'll never know. My hope is to drill down to the local level and try to find out who is, most folks in rural communities know who's in that community and why. We can develop those relationships and reach out to those carriers.
Jeff, welcome to the fray. In your new role, you've been involved as AT&T and T-Mobile since I've known you, and many things before. So that new money, the $3 million, I just saw last night, details on the budget, and it did make it. It was in the governor's original budget and made through the legislature. That money, as I understand, is available July 1 to the Commerce Authority. Could you talk a little about your development of a grant program and its guidelines relative to that?
I can't give you specifics, but the grant program will be geared towards call them shovel-ready projects, folks that have already organized and have a project that's ready to go, that maybe for some economic reason has a middle mile gap that doesn't make sense to the carrier. We're also looking for projects that will lead to future development. We all know that 5G is the future, and we want to make sure that we have fiber into these communities, we have redundancy into these communities. I spent some time in Payson and just saw some ridiculous pictures of exposed conduit. This is exposed conduit on federal land, and for the folks the carrier, in this case CenturyLink, to get onto that federal land to do maintenance, it was a 28-day wait, which is just nuts, because as you know, that fiber carries not just telephone traffic and data traffic, but cell phone traffic, credit card processing. God forbid there's a fiber cut. I don't know how quickly we're going to get folks out there. So redundancy is another thing we're looking at. I should also mention, and again, we're having very early discussions with some non-traditional folks, specifically rural electric companies in other parts of the country. They're very active. And we have an ongoing dialogue with a very large electric company here that if we're able to get some things changed, will be an absolute game changer for the state of Arizona. So keep your fingers crossed.
Okay.
I can speak loud enough. I think everybody can hear me. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the folks online, Gail, and that's all.
Tested. One of the things that came out of our mapping study, the very first part of it, quite a while ago, was that the lattice, the various telcos and their where they have monopoly status. That was the great division, because the lattices are not, they do not connect to each other necessarily. Huge bands of unconnected areas that are between all the lattices in the state that the monopolies of telcos have control of. And the fibers typically stop at the lattice border. This is true in Forest Lakes, between Forest Lakes and Payson. And this is true in a number of other places. If you look at the fiber map, you'll see it almost, it's grossly available to visual view. Anyway, that's one thing that we need to coordinate, is how to get across those boundaries, those barriers. And the other thing that we did in the state, and I don't know if it ever got down to the county levels, but the legislation that we passed took the use of just two changes. We added the word data to the use of roads in the state. That roads also carry data. And that was for state roads. And it's the charters in the various counties have similar structure as the older state definition of the road was. Then you can quickly go back and put data in the, and then all of a sudden it becomes a primary use to transport data. We had it all worked out pretty well 8 years ago, what we would do with regard to those conduits. We didn't want to build fiber itself, we wanted to build conduit. That's 9/10 of the cost. And so those are two suggestions that if they haven't been done yet, they ought to be quickly looked at as an overview. And it's a real easy thing to see where the weak spots are in the state with regard to statewide broadband system.
One of the challenges, I met with both ADOT and State Land my first week, because I feel like those are some key partners in this thing. ADOT doesn't always have right of way. In many cases, there's easement issues. If you travel around the state, as I know you have, there are some real geographic challenges. You're going across federal land, national parks, sacred land from Native American tribes. It's not easy. So my hope is that we can work with some of the elected folks to do a little bit more aerial stuff and avoid some of the digging that has slowed things down. We have a question here. Is there a future possibility of getting state matching funds to pay for future E-rate projects, such as the program that just ended? Unfortunately, I'm not the policy guy. I would definitely reach out to the governor's office on that. That's been a very successful program, and Tobin should be commended for the work that he did to put that together. That was used as a template for a lot of what we're doing, so I would hope so.
So I just want to, just quickly, for those of you who've been hearing Galen speak, Galen has been involved for many, many years in broadband planning in the state. And so Galen, appreciate all the time and effort. And so I'm going to embarrass him. I know John Kelly's sitting in the back of the room there. And John has been, besides being a longtime board member for ATIC, had a similar position for Jeff. John, how long ago was that? Well, long time ago. So it's been kind of a long time. Well, and Galen sort of played that role for a while. So again, we're glad to have Jeff. Any other questions? Any other questions? Going once?
I was going to mention also that in addition to the telecom and electric companies, there are certain core institutions in the state that have a great track record of getting things done in the state. Those of you who followed what President Crow has done at ASU is, I'm a U of A guy. It's amazing. Working with Michael, the Sun Corridor is another key partner for us. I think at the education institutions, we're meeting with the Hospital Association. We're trying to find this critical mass. I don't know if this is public knowledge yet. I hope I'm not breaking anybody's trust here, but there will be a new telecom contract coming in very shortly. Part of that telecom contract, I think that the state, in my opinion, again, this may not wind up there, but we need to start coordinating our efforts. When you have multiple agencies in the same building buying from different vendors, you don't get economies of scale. I think it's important that we work together and we rally around and purchase things to the state. And I think we'll get more done acting like a large company than a bunch of individual small businesses. So again, a lot on my plate right now, but there's always time. I'd be happy to give you a call. Or you're welcome to come down and meet with us as well if you have an organization that has interest in finding funding. And when I say finding funding, I don't just mean with us, I mean with the federal government as well. There's a lot of money out there with the federal government. It kills me that New Mexico is just killing us on this thing right now. We need to get it together.
You guys, they're doing well.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah, one more question.
Thank you. Have you considered incorporating mesh networks as part of getting connectivity within communities in rural areas?
Yuma actually has a really interesting idea for a mesh network with a company called, I believe it's Anycom, to provide backhaul services for Wi-Fi and cellular networks. I haven't dug too much into it, but I'm a big believer of the all of the above strategy. I think every community has unique needs. There are some communities that will be best served by fiber, some by microwave. there's a small town here in Arizona that's put through for a federal grant to get satellite. That's how isolated they are. So I'm of the all of the above strategy. So if the mesh network works, let's do it.
Jeff, thank you very much for being here today. I know Jeff can't really hang around, so if any of you want to give him your card before he leaves, and again, we really appreciate you being here. So let's take a quick 5-10 minute break. Get up and stretch, go to the restroom, whatever you want. When we come back, I have another video, and hopefully the people online will be able to hear that video. So let's take, just 5-10 minutes quickly. So thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Okay. Do I have a USB? This is for our camera.
We're running quite a bit behind now.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't think we're too bad. But I think we'll be okay. What time is it?
It's 4 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And we've got a lot more stuff to go, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think. Thank you. I think.
Yeah.
Until next fall, next August. So this next year I'm working. No, I mean, year, so 2020. What topics? Oh, right.
Yeah.
And you have
I just got a call from the Tucson guy
for the summer conference on July 12th.
I can't do it right now, Tracy. Sorry, I got
that's
something
okay.
I got to get done here.
I got some coordination going. And this is awesome. But that brings up this broadband thing. When he was talking about that, that's one of the problems with some of this.
Absolutely.
We don't have enough.
Yep. Okay, why is this not here? Huh. Weird.
Can you name it?
My understanding is
Control F.
not been
Yeah, it's
extremely hard. That's kind of anecdotal. I don't have any data, but I know that it's effective involved in installation or calling. They seem to get that. And as long as I think
there we go.
I think if you've got the provider on your side, help you with I mean obviously the primary thing is you got it 6 months later. And that should be and I think
That one's coming up.
In a moment.
Michael?
No, we have something else. We're actually running pretty far behind schedule here, so.
We're still like back this long, and that's going to take. To me, it seems like the main thing is a provider and
Good information.
Yeah.
But I can ask around. I think. I knew what they. Right. No, I always thought the March 1st.
Okay, if I can have your attention, if you start coming back, please, I'd appreciate it.
But before that, I would definitely just make sure that they're back.
Pardon? I can't, gotta find this.
So are you connecting to our presentation?
Yes.
Online, or do
Yes.
I have to do
No,
that?
no, I've got it.
You got it.
The March 1st has always been in there.
Okay, why is
We're
this?
that late. We're gonna. I don't think they're. I'll reread that. I didn't think. You got it before that. No, I don't know. Just that if it is that late, you're gonna get. And we're getting a random question. You know, it's occasionally we're getting this question. That's a new maximum person. And they're terrible. They're terrible. I know they put last time I didn't look at the funding way. I mean, there was some questions from projects.
Yeah, really.
They compared to that first one, which was just referring to low dollars.
Those of you online, please be patient with us. We'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, as long as, I mean, it seems like the and I mean, you know, so I'll ask her and see. Oh.
Okay, can I ask you all to please come back? We're running behind schedule, so I want to get going.
No, that they were contracted to expire. Yeah, they're government. Looks like it's a couple of fighters. But anyway,
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Karen, Michael, John Lucas, could you guys join us up here, please? Hi, John. How are you? Hi, Karen. So I don't know if I've ever met you in person. Good
I
to
know
see
it.
you.
That's what I saw a couple people,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, hi, how are you?"
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, share. So, assuming this all works. So we have three folks here today who are very engaged with with some major projects here in the state of Arizona that I think you folks, if you don't know, ought to know about. And so I'm glad to welcome Karen Ziegler, who's AZ FirstNet Project Manager with the state of Arizona. Actually, she's got other things. I'm sorry, I thought I had it on here, and I don't. Michael Sherman, who is Executive Director, and I thought I changed that too, with the other Sun Corridor Research and Education Network, and John Lucas, who's with SACNet, the State of Arizona Counties Communications Network. So Karen, if we can start with you, if you can just give us a quickie, and we are running pretty far behind, so let's keep it as short as possible. John, Michael, you're the only one who has a PowerPoint. You guys do not. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We can do it. It's not a problem. So it's ready to go.
There might be a couple of.
Okay, so we can do that. So Karen, leave it up to you first, please.
Thank you. Like I said, my name is Karen Ziegler. I am with the State of Arizona Department of Administration, Office of Grants and Federal Resources. I retired after a long career in criminal justice from the state of Arizona, and they asked me to come and run the FirstNet project as the project manager. So in this room, how many of you have heard of FirstNet? Okay, good. So it's probably a little bit more than half. So, excuse me? 3.0? So FirstNet is the First Responder Network Authority, and it is a dedicated national public safety broadband network for our first responders, police, fire, emergency services. So it is a federal government program that was created through legislation through the Department of Commerce called the FirstNet Authority. They went and did an RFP and hired a contractor to build out this network. So the state's responsibility is to provide education and outreach and planning for this network as AT&T, who is the provider to FirstNet Authority, they come in the state and build out this network. So it's, a lot of people will think of FirstNet as a cell service, but it's a lot more. It's supposed to provide mission critical data across the state to all rural, tribal, and our urban areas. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today is all interconnected. Cell towers require backhaul, fiber. We can leverage the new tower usage for other projects in a community. So when I started looking at doing the education and outreach, what I really found was that there was no broadband out there in those rural areas. So thus started working with ATIC and all these great folks here, to start putting together, a plan. One of the recommendations was to hire a broadband director, which now we have Jeff, so I'm very excited about that. And so just recently, I was asked to also work on the state 911 program. Is any of you familiar with Next Generation 911? Okay. Few less people. Next Generation 911 is delivering our 911 calls through an IP-based network. Again, that's going to take fiber. It's a network. It goes out to all regions of the state, tribal. So we are woefully behind in 911 service in the state. So we have a lot of initiatives that, you guys want to hear me? Really? Okay. So we have a lot of initiatives going on with some federal grant funds that are coming to the state and our state 911 funding to build a statewide EZNet for 911 call delivery. So I wear a lot of hats, running around talking to as many people as I can. And my motto, like Jeff, is let's get everybody at the table. Let's work together. We can leverage the E-rate programs, the telehealth programs, and all the different activities, and hopefully, come and build out a good network for delivery to our citizens. So I think I will stop there, and I will let Michael.
Thank you, Karen. Before I start talking about the Sun Corridor Network, if you'll indulge me with a couple of remarks here. I know a lot of people in this room, and a lot of people that have been involved in the cause of broadband for a long time, and I use that term cause because I know a lot of people think about it that way. It's not a business transaction, it's something more than that, right? And so, fortunately, unfortunately, I've been around Arizona broadband for longer than I like to admit, but I think this is a very exciting time. I mean, yes, we have problems. We still have a huge digital divide. And John deals with that all the time. But let's stop and think about what's happened now. There are schools that do have access to gigabit speed. I'm blown away. We're involved in the E-rate program, and what kind of requests that we see coming from schools. Yes, rural schools have a problem. For the first time, as Jeff pointed out, with ACC and the Department of Education, the Arizona money got used to build stuff.
They're going to hear more stuff
for the first time, right? And we've got an appropriation of money to build stuff for the first time. FirstNet, going to have a huge impact. So, as John Winhausen pointed out, there's more federal legislative activity. He's right. I've got a 7-page memo that I got today from a trade association listing all the potential legislation out there. So this is a good time for us, and you know, continue to keep pushing. My organization, you know, hasn't been around that long. It's kind of a new broadband asset in the state. So I just think let's recognize our successes also. There's a lot. You know, you might
You want your
start flipping through. The Sun Corridor Network is Arizona's higher education research and education network. We operate. Go ahead, advance. Operate a gigabit speed network whose core mission is to support research and education activities of higher education. So today, all research is data, right? All research is compute, storage, transmission of data. And I think we're north of 1.3 billion in research grant money in the state now among the universities. And so our network is used by really all researchers in all three universities, and they use it to collaborate through our network and something called Internet 2. I'll touch on, collaborate with other institutions, other colleges, other research agencies, federal agencies, etc. So we've been around since 2013, and only fairly recently have we turned to offering kind of our benefits of our economy to scale to other users. So you can think of us as kind of Arizona's education ISP. So we can offer internet access and some other features of our network to the whole K-20 spectrum. We have community colleges, school districts, other research entities. We do it by partnering with carriers. In fact, right now, we're in the process of working with Zayo to add TGen in the City of Hope, as you know, in genomics research focused on cancer at 10 gigabytes. We are one of about 40 other higher education research networks in the country, and one of the youngest and actually one of the smallest, but just about every state has a version of the Sun Corridor network. And we are the connector network. Steve, if you would advance to a slide of a map of Internet 2. Keep going. There it is. So Internet 2 is the national multiple 100 gig speed network that's devoted to higher education and research in this country. So we're the connector network for that. So we connect both University of Arizona and then here in Phoenix, Internet 2 at 100 gig. So that's what kind of enables research collaborations that we see going on today. One of the things that's unique about this network is it's purpose-built for some of the most demanding users in the country, and so it's a very low latency network. Well, let me add. We're also interconnected to international networks in a number of places.
Is that the one you want to do?
Yeah. In fact, I should mention we're working on a project right now with the University of Sonora and the Mexican National Higher Education Network to add another interconnection into the United States through Nogales. Mexico already higher education interconnects through Tijuana and Ciudad Juarez into El Paso, and there's advantages to come through Dallas. But yeah, the Internet 2 backbone, very low latency, and that matters to researchers. We have a research program at U of A that's moving petabytes of data, massive amounts. It's a bio science research platform. And so it's really important. So it's the kind of thing that kind of distinguishes us from the commercial internet, if you will. And it enables certain education applications, if you will. And Steve, if advance. I'm going to try to show this really cool video that that kind of demonstrates the power of the Sun Corridor Internet 2 network. Yeah, there you go.
So hopefully the folks online will hear, will be able to see this video.
So let me stop for a moment and pause that. Actually advance. There should be another. You could advance. So
it's on another page.
Stop there.
Is this it?
Yeah. So through Internet 2, a couple of our users are involved in a program called VOLA. It's just the acronym for VOLA. But it's a remote or distance music performance and education program and technology. One of our school districts, Paradise Valley, very advanced school district, has one of the only about 20 roller nodes around the country, and ASU has one of the damaged auditorium. With music, remote music performance, latency is a really big issue. Right? Any kind of delay, you're unable to perform simultaneously. Just basic video conferencing, it's not so nice. So there's been, I know Paradise Valley has done things like arranged real-time performances between Lexington Library in Kentucky and their other schools here in Arizona. But I'm going to show you a really cool video where the ASU Woodwind Orchestra performed in real time with a number, I think it's about 10 Paradise Valley students, being conducted by the director of dance and orchestra.
John, how long? I mean, how long is it?
2 minutes.
Okay. Because we are running pretty late.
So the video speaks 1,000 words.
So I'm assuming that the video plays.
So, yeah, so Jason Cashler, the director of dance and orchestra there at ASU, unfortunately really a technology guy, and this short video really doesn't do justice about the power of what goes on. He was conducting it with PhD students in his own orchestra. He's also done using the network to conduct master classes between Phoenix and Boston for music. So, anyway, just an example of the power of.
You have any more slides?
No, I'm not.
You're done?
Okay.
I don't mean to be.
You want to shut me off?
I don't mean to be rude, but I've been bad. Let people carry on. So, okay. So next is John Lucas. Yeah. And so, John, you want to tell us a little bit about SACnet and what you've been involved in?
Sure. Has anybody ever heard of SACnet before?
Thank you.
We've been around for a long time. A little bit of history, kind of give you where we came from. I started in Graham County back in 1996. And at that time, we had a 5-year waiting list for a T1. We had 56K lines in our school and nothing else. Like I said, there's no projection forward. So we, that was kind of the beginning of it all, as we started looking at things. What really kicked SACnet off was Y2K. Okay. SACnet, let me just do the description real quick. I'm getting old, so I have to read it to you. SACnet is a statewide strategic communication initiative involving all 15 counties to provide a secure county-to-county, county-to-state video, voice, data and a secure intranet while providing redundant telco and data communications throughout the state of Arizona to both public and private sectors. So our goal is not technology, it's the concept of interoperability and communication, okay? That we are looking at it, a lot of you probably hadn't heard of it because we're kind of a quiet secret, because we are there for emergency service. We're for GPS links and communication links for elections, so your elections stay up. So when the internet goes down, we can still have elections. You know, these type of things like that. So we are looking at trying to develop a network that could sustain and have redundancy to do this with. Throughout this, how many years it's been, it seems like forever. One of the acronyms to describe SatNet and where we've been is, I call it YCDC. You can't do that. You know, every time we try to do something, you can't do that. You can't do that. You know, we were told that we couldn't connect our cities together in a fiber network, but we did it. Okay. We were also told in 2006 that we couldn't create mobile networks. This is in 2006 in our cars. We did it. Okay, we covered almost 1,000 square miles riding on this fiber network and then broadcasting throughout the county of Arizona, county of Brown County. We were told that we couldn't connect high schools together to do distance learning. So we did it. And we connected not only Brown County High School, but also Greenland County High School together, the local community college and all the college courses. And again, that was back in 2008, I think it was. Okay. So we've had a history of, and that's where we've come. We've always looked at what can't we do and look at the ways that we can do it. Not so much on the standard way of doing things. We look at more the other alternative way of doing things. We then had, in I think it was about 2008, we had a major fiber cut down in Bisbee. It took out 4 counties down to Dallas, including our 911 PSAP centers. So you couldn't call anybody. You couldn't call grandma next door. You couldn't call anything at all. And that made us realize that, hey, this is beyond just our local community. And that's kind of when we actually started getting deeper into the SatNet project. And it became a 15 county project, all 15 counties for the CIOs, county CIOs working together, looking at ways that we can create redundancy, you know, and alternative redundancy. And we had fiber in the ground, but you cut it, you take out 4 counties down to Dallas. So that wasn't what we needed. And it just wasn't in the business plan of the carriers to resolve that problem. So we looked at how do we resolve the problem. And so we went to bid, RFP, went out there looking at alternative way to do it. We came up with a microwave solution. About that time, we got involved with the stimulus program. And we were able to get a $60 million grant to do a stimulus program. And that was called the SatNet Arizona Critical Middle Mile Project. And we've been working on that project since about 2012, I guess. The days kind of go by. So what that project there does, this is basically SatNet Phase 1, is it puts in a microwave network throughout the state of Arizona. And now it is actually up and running in 14 of the 15 counties. We carry all the Supreme Courts on it, all the counties on it, GPS links on it, elections on it. It's a direct link from the counties directly into the state Capital Mall network and all the Capital Mall resources. It basically allows, like all the Supreme Courts are on it, a lot of the several private sectors on it. This is a project with a joint venture with the counties and a private carrier called GovNet, that they're actually one that actually services it to the stimulus program through the VTOP grant. And again, that is up and going. Okay, you probably don't hear much about it because they're busy out there bringing up schools and hospitals and courts and so forth out there. It's basically about a 6 gig network throughout the state of Arizona. The objective to us, though, was not to create a separate network. Our objective was to create a redundant network. You know, we need to be able to know that when that fiber got cut, we had someplace else to go to. We weren't so concerned about the speed, we were more concerned about the redundancy. And I have been involved in this a long time, and I've talked to Karen about it too. I'd rather have 10 meg of full redundant bandwidth than 100 meg of non-redundant bandwidth. because I can depend on it, I can build my business on it. And of course, when emergency services come, I need to know it's there, regardless of what it is. And so that's what SatNet is working on those technologies to bring it. Again, ours is about concept and about emergency services, but of course we have to build technology to do that with. And so that's been some of our objectives right there in doing that. Now that's up and going, we are now entering into working again with the County Supervisors Association. And we work under them and with the League of Cities and Towns as well, working on what's called SatNet Phase 2, which that is basically a carrier-neutral fiber network, utilizing county and city right-of-ways and so forth to lay new fiber in the ground. Our primary objective, of course, is for emergency services with an overbuild for carriers as well. Basically trying to get grants to try to lease it off at low cost. Our objective is we're not carrier negative, we're carrier neutral. Our objective is we want carriers to be everywhere, not just in the areas we're in. We want to open opportunities so that by using us not as an anchor tenant, initially we were an anchor tenant, now we looked at ourselves more as a foundation tenant, to create a foundation. We look at the fiber not as digital, we look at more as a highway, much like the highway system. Counties maintain the highways and roads. This is part of the highways and roads, as I mentioned before. A lot of time and development gone through this concept out here. But that's basically what SatNet is, very high level view where we're going to. Again, we're very quietly doing our thing. We're trying to get something done.
Thanks, John. I'm not going to take questions now. Hopefully that afterwards you folks will have a chance, because again, we're running very late. But thank you all, the three of you, for being here. Really appreciate it tonight. Whoops. Skip that. Okay, so Mala and Mala and Josh, if you'd join me up here, please. I'm sorry, and Nicole. Yes, Nicole, where are you? There she is, over there. So we're going to do this the manual way here. So, pardon? Maybe we can. I don't think so. I don't think it's broad enough, but we can try. So one of the great accomplishments in the last couple of years is, whoops. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, so one of the great accomplishments this past year is the Arizona Broadband for Education initiative. It's been a really great thing, and people like Mala and Mylan, who couldn't be here with us today, and the Education Superhighway, who have been great partners with us. Appreciate Josh coming to visit with us today. And so it's a great accomplishment. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, and Nicole is going to be the moderator for this panel discussion. So Nicole, it's all yours.
Alrighty. Well, I just thought we would kick off by asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves and giving their own bios. Laura, we can start with you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. I work for the State Library of Arizona, and I've been working on E-rate ever since I joined them, 2001. And I am really glad that I participated. That State Librarian's vision to let me do this and take all other projects away from me was a very good thing, because from 2017 until for the next 3 years, that's 2017, 18, and 19, been focusing on the state match grant and E-rate broadband building to our rural libraries. And hopefully this year we will start with the implementation phase of it and get this accomplished within the next couple of years or so.
My name is Josh Chisholm. I'm a program manager with Education Superhighway, a nonprofit based in the Bay Area. We've been around since 2012, and our Band-Aid ends next year in 2020. Our goal is to connect every public school in America to scalable high-speed broadband, to help facilitate that by providing, filling in the gaps in knowledge, information, push towards cost transparency. I've been there since 2016, and I've been working with Arizona that entire time. My background is in E-rate. I was a consultant for a long time, and actually was a consultant for the Universal Service Fund, which I think prior to that. Not quite as long as Mala, but since I guess my first year in the E-rate was 2005.
Well, thanks for being with us today. Let's go ahead and jump in. Molly, could you speak to us a little bit about the Arizona State Library's role in public libraries with E-rate?
Certainly. We've been helping public libraries on three fronts. One, direct assistance to them, soup to nuts for them, because I help them from the point of training them to do their E-rate application, which, by the way, is not just one application, it's 4 applications throughout the year. I help them at every stage of those applications, help them with the technology plan. I help them with understanding the rules and the guidelines and what they can do within those rules and guidelines. Remind them of their deadlines for their application and keep them on task. I also help them with their RFPs and with the review questions once their application goes through to the administrative authorities that review those grants, review those applications. I also work with the State Procurement Office, with Commerce Authority, and with other state and local bodies to make sure that the back office work that enables them to do this application is done on time and within the E-rate cycle. To get the State Procurement Office, for example, to renew their application within the E-rate deadline is an enormous task, because they have to coordinate so many different RFPs from vendors and have multiple vendors participate in the E-rate process. And I do that with both the State Procurement Office as well as with the Mojave Educational Services. So both those set up master contracts to help libraries and schools do their contracts so that they don't have to individually do RFPs or individually do contracts. At the national level, I am the chair of the E-rate task force, the current chair of ALA's E-rate task force. ALA is the American Library Association, and they have a task force that represents the state coordinators to USAC. USAC is the Universal Services Administrative Company that administers the E-rate program. So I represent the problems or the issues and challenges that the state coordinators have to USAC, and I also work through them with FCC, with the Federal Corporation, with the Federal Communication Commission, to help with what areas need rule revision. What are we doing about those areas? How can we do the rulemaking in an easier way out? And then once that is done, try to get all the state, the libraries and schools to respond to those rulemakings that FCC does. I don't do this alone. I work with Mylan, and he can't be here today because he is actually working out there with Mojave County contracts that needed to be modified last minute for some of the activities that are going on in that state, in that county. So those are what we do as the state library to help with this program.
That's a pretty short list of activities. We're certainly lucky. Josh, could you speak to us a little bit about Education Superhighway's mission overall, and especially about some of the progress that Arizona's made since 2016, thinking about the scalability of some of these connectivity projects, making sure schools have adequate bandwidth, and talking about the state matching funds that was mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, Education Superhighway has been around since about 2012. It was founded by Evan Marwell, who is his former life as a venture capitalist entrepreneur, and he went to an event at his kid's school, which is in the Bay Area, more or less the doorstep of Silicon Valley, and tried to show some of the work the kids done there. Starts asking questions and looking at numbers, as that's how his mind works, and he saw a solvable problem. There are programs available, E-rate, primary. There's funding available to address this issue of a lack of bandwidth and a lack of scalability in school connectivity. And he started to put together a team, and he started to put together funding, and the idea, it's been done before, I don't know if it's been done on a scale before. The idea was to put together a nonprofit that had an expiration. So basically, here's a problem, we're going to apply expertise and money to it and solve it by an end date, and then we go. And so next year is our end date. We will be over 99% goal meeting for scalability and bandwidth nationwide by the time we close our year next year. When I say scalability and connectivity, I want to talk a little bit about what I mean, just so when I start reading numbers, we'll kind of have a feel for that. Again, when we started in 2012 and working forward from there, we were using CETA's bandwidth goals. And their 2014 goal for schools was 100 kilobits per second per student. Every year we put out a state of the states snapshot where you can go on our website and look at a nationwide report and then a report for each state, and it breaks down sort of how they are in relation to one another, how they're meeting these goals. We've continued to use that 2014 goal of 100 students just for the sake of continuity of data, and that was our initial goal. We're still trying to meet our initial goal. The 2018 goal from CETA is 1 megabit per second. We do track that as well, and that is really what we are encouraging people to see as far as when we talk to schools about it. We want them to be looking at a meg per student if possible. As far as scalability, in a perfect world, every school would be on fiber. We recognize that for a lot of reasons that's not always feasible, and sometimes it's not absolutely necessary. Smaller sites, microwave technology is very robust at this point, and so we really look at, when we judge or we report whether or not a district is scalable, we are looking at their size and location and feasibility of the various types of connection. So we're not saying, there was a point in our earlier history where we would say, it's not on fiber, then it's not scalable. We've backed away from that and recognize that there are multiple possible solutions for schools, especially in middle school. So as far as progress, just to give you a picture of how far we've come, let's see, in 2013, which was the first year we had a full set of data, about 4 million students across the country had access to 100 meg per second bandwidth. As of 2018, we were at 44.7 million students having that same level. And the median bandwidth across the nation is getting close to about 500K per student, so about halfway to that CETA goal. It's pretty impressive. As I said, by this time next year, or well, by the fall of next year, we should be able to report that over 99% of all campuses, public school campuses across the country are at 100K or above, and also meet that scalability. Within Arizona, in 2015, the year before we started, about 63% of Arizona students had access to 100K per second per student at their school facilities. As of the 2018 cycle, so not counting this most recent rate, we were at about 95, 96%, and we will definitely be over 99%. I believe once we process it in 2019, we only have to wait till 2020 to say that Arizona is over 99%. In the last year, we've brought the number of students lacking 100K per student per second per student down from over 79,000 in Arizona to about 36,000. Half that. When I say we, I mean collectively, not just obviously. Again, our job is to fill in the gaps in experience and knowledge, make sure people understand what's available to them, and help them get there. So I mentioned writing RFPs, do RFP writing. We are not E-rate consultants, but we do training so that schools that can't afford an E-rate consultant can manage that process. We meet with vendors and we provide email blasts whenever a school posts an RFP for seeking fiber or seeking robust microwave or a good scalable connection for their size in Arizona during the E-rate season. We make sure that that goes out to every vendor that we know of that operates in that. If any of you have not been to those emails during the E-rate season, come see me. I'll make sure you're on the list for the next time around. Pricing is also an issue, which a lot of you know. We saw some really astounding cost per meg in Arizona when we first started. And there's still some that are really outside of where they should be. The average pricing in 2015 when we started was about $14 per meg. We got that down to around $8.33 as of 2018. And it's actually substantially less the more you ask. So right now for schools that are asking for 1 gigabit circuits, they're paying somewhere around $5 per meg. We'd like to see them all at $3. That's our goal nationally, is about $3 per meg for circuits. And we're getting pretty close. It's really impressive savings. We're seeing, you look at E-rate, the amount of money being requested is flat, and the amount of bandwidth being requested is growing exponentially as prices are coming down. Coverage and competition in these markets. One of, I think, our biggest success in Arizona that had some part in was the state matching funds that Commissioner Tobin, Ducey, Mala, and Island all came together. We had a small part in helping to work on some of the language. We helped facilitate state matching funds. 13 or 14 states now. I think there are over 20 states that now have funds or have had funds that they've already spent through. And I believe that the last of the money was actually committed this cycle. Obviously, we would love to see some more funding come in for that in the future. But for those that don't know, the state matching fund is essentially money specifically for the build costs, last mile build costs to connect school, campus, and library sites. So if, for example, a school or library has a discount level of 80% in the E-rate program, the state will contribute 10% of the upfront build costs for getting them connected to fiber. And then if the state commits that 10%, then the FCC commits an additional 10%, which essentially means that there is no upfront cost for that school to get fiber built to their doorstep. All they have to be responsible for is the 20% of the ongoing monthly charge. That really opened the floodgates for new projects. I think the sort of scale projects, the consortium projects that are happening with the libraries, Frank Vanderhorst, who I believe is on the line remotely, has been a big part of the school side of that, getting, he works with the Occupy, but he also does consulting work for a lot of the other countries. We've seen consortium projects, Yavapai, Canal, Apache, Navajo, Cheese, I mean, all over La Paz, and we're seeing huge price savings, much better connectivity. They're not simple, they're not easy to get through the process. That's part of this help with that back end stuff, and we provide some expertise to help make sure those RFPs are written properly, those review questions are written properly, so get these things through and approved, and then hand it over to the wonderful vendors to get out there and get just overall, just an amazing amount of progress by Kamala, Island, and everyone else we worked with in Arizona. Really
So Josh was mentioning some projects that are going on in different parts of the state. Mala, could you tell us a little bit more about some of these projects with the state library and with the Department of Ed as well?
Right.
Susan, I'll be one of those slides.
You can get the preference. Okay, this is good. This is good. Josh talked about the state matching funds, and I just, in the interest of time, I'm not going through all of the slides, and but I'd really like to show here, if you look at the last line that talks about the totals that have been applied for, we have $190 million in requests in the last 3 years. And if you look at how much we have spent, the libraries and schools together will have spent 1 million, and the state matching portion is 11 million to get $190 million worth of broadband funding for the state. This is tremendous by any standard. And we haven't yet done the last year, so this is, if you see how long it takes almost 3 years from start of doing the RFPs to doing the applications to getting the project opened up to finally getting the project completed and invoicing USAC, that's the Universal Service Administrative Company, to get that fund back, to get it reimbursed. So that's the scale of the project, and that's the length of time it takes for something like this to be accomplished. To answer your question about the role that the state library has, for projects that the state library has a number of ways in which they're helping with these projects. Most of what we need through the library require broadband, one way or the other. The libraries cannot just function anymore without broadband being available. That's a given. But having said that, and the state provides also a number of e-resources that can be accessed by all of you with just putting in a zip code from wherever you are. You can access resources that for homework help, for research, reading the newspapers, do it yourself, learning languages. All of those e-resources require bandwidth, whether you're accessing it at the library or accessing it from home. And part of the reason why we are doing some of these projects that we're doing is because of low bandwidth in residence. So our patrons are not able to access all these resources. They are not, or digital literacy, they are not literate digitally to know that these are available and how we use them. And so a number of projects that we've been doing are to help get through these problems. Libraries provide literacy training. Libraries provide programs where they offer hotspots. They offer technology equipment that can be loaned, that can be taken home to use. Slide, I think, just before this.
So before.
Yes, that's right. You're right. So some of the projects that we've been doing, the Glendale Idea Project, is trying to bring businessmen, bringing entrepreneurs, bringing inventors together and having them do something like this: network, share ideas, share projects, get to know each other and see what they can do about it. So getting them together. The Glendale Idea Center is actually Glendale Innovation Development Entrepreneurial Assistance Center. That's a center where they get all these things together. The center offers career guidance. It offers assistance to job seekers. It has dedicated computers for job seekers and a laptop for Skype interviews. They have a scanning facility there, so you can scan in your resume, send it to different people. You can scan in whatever projects you have done. They also have a 3D printer where you can actually do prototypes of your projects and see how it works before it actually is put out into the world there. So, and all this is available through the library. And getting these people together is not just physically together, but through Skype, through Zoom, getting them through the internet and building that network. The Douglas Library is now doing a project with Kiwi Whitespace. They already have done a lot of work in this area. They are putting two, let's say, hotspots satellites in their own library. They call them base stations. And then they have 3 more base stations out in the community so that when the library is closed and when it is not functional or in the areas that the Wi-Fi from the library can't reach, these hotspot kind of satellite centers will provide internet connectivity for the population in that area. So again, this is an initiative from the Douglas Library. The Cochise County Library District has the Mobile Tech Lab where they loan out iPads, ThinkPads, hotspots, and all of and at the same time educate them about how to use these different devices. So the state library is funding all this through the LSTA grants, the Library Services Technology Act. These grants come from IMLS, that's who funded the books that we have distributed today as well. So those are some of the bigger projects that we are doing with around the library, and there are hundreds of such projects that we've been doing through the years with each of the public libraries.
I think we're going to be done because we're running really late. Unless there's anything in particular that either of you that really needs to be talked about that we haven't.
I just wanted you to go forward with the slides and just show them what project. Yes. We have done several projects that are in different stages of completion with the state matching fund, and anyone who wants to know where we are at this, you can go to the next slide and the next one. Just let's go through it. There are 30 projects that are happening around the states right now, and that's kind of the distribution of what that looks like as of now.
Is the libraries only or schools also?
This includes schools and libraries.
Okay. Just 1 second before we. I'm going to just take a quick break here for 1 second, and we'll come back to them. So we're going to hear some Ignite presentations in just a minute, but we had planned to do some questions, and Nan back there with the Arizona Technology and Education Association, we were going to do some quick table stuff, but we're running out of time, and Nan has to run off. So just Nan, just quickly, you want to just make a couple of quick comments. I'm sorry to break the flow here, but she has to be out of here. So
basically, Steve's going to send you these 4 questions. Steve is going to send you these 4 questions and a follow-up email. And we have a Google form for you to fill out, and then just give us your ideas, because we feel like we have a multitude of brain power here. And for us to not ask you questions would be a disservice.
Thank you, Nan.
Please fill out the form.
And I apologize to Nan that we didn't, you know, people kept asking me, so what's the schedule? How much time do I have? And I kept saying, you know, I'll get to that, I'll get to it. So I crashed and burned. And so we're running a little bit over time. So again, Nan, I apologize for that. So now going back, Jeff, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, real quick. Mala has done an amazing job at the bar very high. People realize what you do now, money that provides precedent. My question is for Josh.
In Texas, in the Learn Network, and in California, in Scenic, I believe, how do they do E-rate differently than we do to connect to those networks, and what can we learn from them?
That's a great question. I can speak, I'm going to restrict myself to Scenic just because a lot of my experience is in California, and I have less experience directly with the Texas Learn Network. in California, scenic applies for the backbone. They have a state contract with a large E-rate consultant, and they apply for all of the backbone, the sort of aggregated bandwidth that's going to be distributed to all the members, and that's basically every school district in California. Those connections, to a large extent, go to nodes, which are typically each county has an Office of Education. Typically, those are the scenic nodes throughout the state. For a lot of schools, they are then responsible for that last mile connection to the county. If they can pay for a circuit, which is essentially they don't have to pay for the internet access, but a WAN circuit back to that county node, then they get free access to the scenic. Which is Internet 2, the whole kind of similar to the Sun Corridor type services. There are some other grant programs that some of the smaller districts are able to apply for, and scenic will actually go all the way to their front doors and handle that through the state contract with this consultant who files for them. I think I look at every for those of you know about E-rate, every Form 471, which is the actual application where you're listing specific amounts of money and vendors and locations, and the scenic typically files about 50 Form 471s every year, and the longest one I saw was 1,600 pages. This is a big job, I mean, the flip side of that is if California can manage that in a simple way, then pretty much any state can do it. You have to get some outside help, like California did with getting an E-rate consultant. But basically they said, we will handle filing for and dealing with and doing the procurement process and everything for this backbone. And if you can connect, you can get your circuit from you to your county office, which for a lot of the state is not onerous. It's a relatively affordable connection. Then you have basically free internet for just the cost, for your discounted cost of that.
Okay. We're not going to take any more questions because we're already behind schedule. We have one other key thing on the agenda is our Ignite presentations. We have two. As I mentioned, those Ignite presentations are 5 minutes each. That's it. So it'll be a couple minutes. I hope you'll be patient with us and let's get ignited.
Nicole?
Yeah.
I'm the moderator.
Let's get going.
Okay, who's first?
If I may, I actually will.
Sorry.
Okay. So
So I should, what happened to it? That's weird. I should have those slides here. Oh, I know where they are. I think. Oh, weird.
Can you hear me? Okay. We'll start here with the Ignite presentation. In the interest of time, I won't belabor you with an introduction to Mark. He needs no introduction anyway. So Mark Goldstein is going to give us an Ignite presentation on
Something's weird here.
emerging
Maybe he will. What happened here?
Don't you need it on a standalone PowerPoint?
Well, let me find out, see if I can find out what happened here, because it should be here. Huh.
So this is a new thing for me. I think the shortest presentations I do are probably about 30 minutes, and the longest as much as 2 hours.
When have you given a presentation as short as 30 minutes?
Well, it was a struggle, but today was going to be
When I take all of his time.
or perhaps.
There we go.
Okay.
Hold on. So give me a second here.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, first slide. So the famous Ray Kurzweil, can I sit where I can see the screen and
Yes.
the mic, talks about a singularity where the evolution of computers reach the level of a human brain about 20 years out in the 2020s and all human brains in the 2040s. So an unrelenting growth there. IoT networks going to be 50 billion devices by most projections 5 years out, going to serve a variety of needs and introduce a lot more data into society and applications that use that data. For example, the smart home projected to be an average of 100 devices per home, from smart lighting, smart speakers, security, medical interfaces, and all sorts of other things. In the factory of the future, there'll be an integrated supply chain, but also a term that's interesting to me, cobots, working side by side or in partnership with robots in the factories. Healthcare, we have our friends from U of A, telehealth here, but that healthcare will move from personalized, your sports stuff, in the house, letting you age in place, we call it, get older at home, and integrate through the medical system. Big push of virtual reality, augmented reality, saw amazing stuff from Universal Studios, frankly, at ASU Law a few days ago, is going to be an application. Autonomous vehicles, Arizona is a true hub in the universe for autonomous vehicles. They're going to save lives. They're going to give us something called mobility as a service, everything from scooters and bicycles on up to rides on demand. The smart city is going to generate oodles and oodles of data and serve to integrate lifestyle and mobile with pollution monitoring and energy management and all sorts of applications. How do we connect it? Well, 5G is not a panacea, but one of the major players. Here's how we've progressed since the 80s. I think 84 was the analog first network to today, the advent of 5G. 5G will do three things well: enhanced broadband, low latency that Michael Sherman talked about, critical for some applications, not all, and the massive amount of IoT devices. So any application may only need one or two of those three things. It's taking longer than it should, maybe. Wow. But 5G is being deployed. Phoenix is one of the 20 cities that Verizon has announced, for example, for next year. The autonomous vehicles will talk vehicle to everything, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to infrastructure over 5G and another form. Wi-Fi will continue to expand to AX Wi-Fi and beyond, white space based Wi-Fi for greater distances, 10 to 100 kilometers. But the long story short is that we're going to use a whole melange, a whole variety of connection technologies, depending on distance, licensed, unlicensed, bandwidth, and other factors. So what are we going to do with all that data? A car alone, autonomous car, is going to generate 4 terabytes of data a day. So this is an Intel slide. They'd like to sell you a lot of storage and CPU power. So essentially with big data, we talk about moving from descriptive analytics, what happened, to why it happened, diagnostics, to predictive, what will happen, to prescriptive, how to avoid problems. So there's a continuum. And essentially in this slide, we talk about machine learning applied to big data, lets you answer new answers to new questions. And I like that chart. And the final, next to final slide is hard to read. These slides will be up on SlideShare later tonight, and Steve may make them available. But the hype cycle is there are different things that get promised, their hype builds, and then some of them hit their plateau of productivity, some don't. And this one won't time out, so I'll just take a second and say that at that link on SlideShare, you'll find actually quite a variety of deeper presentations that I do give in a half-hour to 2-hour time frame on subtopics, but I tried to give you 5 minutes with what kind of connectivity we're going to have and what kind of things we're going to carry over in the broadband world.
Awesome. Well done.
Okay.
Good job. Okay, next one.
All right. Our next presenter is Nicole Umaya. I won't bother reintroducing her. She's already been introduced to you as the moderator of the previous panel.
So theoretically,
Nicole,
oops.
it's all yours.
All right, well, we're pretty familiar with this map here, but this is home access rates in Arizona according to the FCC's 2018 broadband deployment. I just like to highlight that 34% of rural areas don't have access, and that is just 8% of tribal areas that don't have access. So of course, we're talking about the digital divide, and I hear from libraries all the time about seeing people who are standing outside of the library building after hours to be able to get access to the internet. So thinking about what some of the biggest reasons are for people having to be in the parking lots are the cost or the unaffordability of service, relevance, as well as the digital skills and knowledge connections to use these technologies. So from my perspective, to make sure that everybody can take advantage of these great infrastructure improvements we're seeing, we need to have a holistic approach, which of course is broadband access, but also means digital skills, devices such as computers, not just cell phones, as well as awareness of the relevance of online education. Libraries have been doing this work for a long time, long before home access was even a thing, and before we even had a name for the digital divide. So thinking about cost, first, we know that libraries provide free internet access not only to the internet, but also to public computers. And in this way, that libraries empower people to really be able to access a number of vital services that they need. In fact, rural and tribal libraries are often the only source available in their area. But we know that rural libraries tend to have fewer operating hours due to low staff and are far under capacity. One project at the state library that we've started is Wi-Fi hotspot lending, where libraries are able to check out mobile Wi-Fi hotspots, just like any library resource, like a DVD or a book. And this is totally free. We ask patrons to fill out surveys after they return to the hotspots. As you can see, once people got access to the service, they took off like bandits and are using the internet for several hours a day. That brain problem that you see there. We also asked about where people go to get online when they don't have internet hotspots. This is my favorite slide because that yellow column is showing that it's really the library that is providing this service. We also saw people go to the courts as well, which is interesting. But what about those people who don't think that they need to get online? Libraries can also offer a lot of programs and outreach to increase awareness of the benefits of new technology and the advantages of getting online. And it's important because this meets people where they're at with the interests that they already have, rather than trying to force a different type of learning model. We offer a number of online databases that help people learn new skills, conduct research, even some great online entertainment platforms. But libraries are really these embedded community centers. And that programming is important because it's adjusted to local interests. We have events such as community scanning and digitization days, job skills fairs, and using technology to meet those individualized learning goals that we heard about this afternoon. We also offer a number of informal learning opportunities, such as STEM programming for school-age children, which really helps to level the playing field in a lot of areas. Of course, that last barrier is the idea of a lack of digital skills, or even basic computer use as well. Digital literacy is the ability to use it and to communicate using technology. Just as libraries had offered word processing software before personal computers were commonplace, and they also offered many people the very first chance to try the internet.
libraries are now helping patrons to explore e-readers, tablets, and self-guided learning. Libraries really are essential community anchor institutions because they can equip students and the broader community with the skills to use internet-enabled technology effectively. This way, they're narrowing the digital divide, especially for those without home internet access. Like basic literacy or reading skills, libraries view universal access to broadband as essential to access knowledge and engagement in society. As John Winkhausen Jr. put it, the network alone isn't the end of the road. We really need these community anchor institutions to make sure that everybody can come along with us. The role of libraries in building digitally inclusive communities hasn't really been more important than it is right now. And I'm so grateful that libraries can be here at this table.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Very good.
So a couple of quick things. Nan already talked to you about this, so we're not going to get into that. So I have two announcements. First of all, who was it that gave me this? You want to come up just quickly? Okay. Yeah. This one. But you need to stand over here so I can hear you online. That's right.
Hello, I'm Melissa Armas. I am with a tech ed nonprofit. We are the Arizona Blockchain Initiative, and we want to make knowledge and training available for everybody. For that, we are building a mesh network for South Phoenix, and we're having an event on Thursday. The event on Thursday is the Arizona Tech Week. It will be at 5:30 at Galvanize, and it's entitled Policy and the Advancement of Communities to Tech Jobs. We will have a few legislators there, and we'll also have community leaders who are helping us building that mesh network and having upskilling for people in South Phoenix.
Okay, thank you. So one last thing. So I was sitting here panicking because I didn't see our food. I forgot to tell them put the food in here. It is back here. So the food and refreshments are back here. So we encourage you to stay, eat, or skip the traffic, and get to know each other a little bit and network. Maybe you want to, some of the people you heard speak today, you might want to partner them, and if you have any questions or share thoughts with them. So with that, thank you all, and please, when you get the email, please respond. Let us know what we did, good, bad, or you can even give me feedback today while you're here. Thank you all for being here today. And those of you online, we're going to sign off now. Thank you for joining us online.